Hello everyone, and welcome to How to Build a Go-Kart Full Dive. I'm your host SpazzyD, and I'll be explaining how I built this go-kart. So, when you're building a go-kart, you can choose to use any materials you really want to build out of. I've seen go-karts built out of wood, steel, aluminum, plastic. Really, it's almost endless in what decision you can make to build your frame from, but you're definitely going to need a frame or else you won't have a kart. I chose to build my frame out of 3/4 inch 16 gauge square tubing, which allows this frame to remain lightweight and still be rigid and strong. I started off by bending these tubes together to make sure that they are going to be as even as possible, because these are going to be our lower left and right frame rails. This isn't particularly necessary to building a go-kart, but for this frame, it was definitely necessary. Next, we're going to need some cross members so that we can attach the two frame rails. These will be cut at 20 inches, making our total frame width 21.5 inches altogether. I made a mistake. This is the front steering bar. It's 24 inches long, so I was wrong. Disregard that. After you have all of your pieces cut out, you're going to want to tack them together. And when I say tack, I mean it, because you're going to want to make sure that your lower frame rails are as straight and true as possible. You don't want your brand new frame starting out its life all twisted up, do you? Okay, so next we're going to have to start welding our spacers for our top rail. Unfortunately, I either misplaced or never recorded making the top rails, but I did record welding on the top rails. Y'all get the point. After which, we're going to weld up some gussets to strengthen the rear of the frame. Then we're going to have to add a floor pan. I chose to use expanded metal simply because that's what I had. After which, I'm going to Thanos snap some hinges into existence like a boss. This allows us to build a subframe complete with coilover shocks. I'm now going to attach the hinges, and as before, I'm going to tack them into place first to make sure that everything's straight and true. And then I'm going to go ahead and tack my subframe up. After welding the seams, I then went on to attach the suspension. I made some U-brackets off camera. We're going to go ahead and get these attached, and then we're going to have to attach it to the top of the frame, which I will do by using some extensions and some more U-brackets. Look at that, all square and true. After doing that, I went ahead and upholstered the bottom part of our seat, as well as I stole a steering rod and steering wheel from an old project that I just didn't necessarily like. So after I did that, I'm going to go ahead and attach the steering so we can get a good point of where all that's going to land out. And I'm setting it for me because this is my personal go-kart. After which, I went ahead and built a backrest for our seat, and I gave it a little bit of a lean and made it a little bit curvy. Now, it doesn't have to be curvy, I just want it to be extra. I'm cutting out some flat bar now so that I can cut and wheel bend later into some steering yokes. The steering yokes are necessary because our steering pinions are going to have to sit inside of them, and they are actually what holds your two steering wheels up front and allows them to turn left and right. Sorry about that, my cats are being menaces. Anyway, as you can see, I'm drilling some holes through our yokes so that we can attach our pinions where they bolt straight through. You can do this in many ways. If you want to go extra fancy, you can put bearings inside of your pinions, but let's be real, it's a go-kart. It really isn't that necessary. However, you do you, man. So after which, I'm showing you right now of how to make our pinions, which is basically what our steering axle is going to be attached to. I just figured I'd throw in some of this because, that's that ASMR type stuff, except it's visual. Always love machining and watching lathes do stuff. Anyway, here's our axles as well as our pinions sitting inside of our yoke. We're going to go ahead and attach our yokes to our frame. You can space your frame out with whatever you want, but just make sure that wherever you space your frame, that's where it's going to be pretty much forever unless you change your wheel size, which I probably am going to do. This is future me speaking. Anyway, we're going to move to the back of the go-kart now, and what we're going to do and what we're showing right here is I'm making a U-bracket for this pillar block bearing to be able to attach our rear axle. Our rear axle is going to be a 1-inch solid steel shaft that I turned down and then put in my mill. and threw some key slots into. And our rear sprocket actually came off of a old ATV. I want to say it was a 90cc ATV that I had when I was a kid. And the sprocket you saw earlier was actually that hub that we're mounting the ATV sprocket to. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, that's our rear axle, and we're going to move from here. Rear axle done, we're going to look around at our go-kart, determine that we like it, and we're going to continue with making our small pieces that are odds and ends that go here and there. Right now I'm bending some 5/16 rods so that I can use them as my brake and throttle pedals, and I then turned and knurled some fatter rod so that I can slide over said pedals. As you can see now, that's pretty much how they're going to look. We're going to weld them up and attach them to our kart. With our pedals made, it's time to finish out our steering linkages. So right now I'm going to make some tabs. These will be welded to our steering axles and pinions. And then we also have to make another steering tab that's attached to our steering rod. I'm tapping these out right now because I've seen a lot of them, I've done a lot of them, and I used to just drill a hole and put a bolt through it. However, that just gets a little tedious. So I decided I would tap it this time so I could just thread a bolt through it and then throw a locking nut on the back side. Worked a lot better considering that I wanted to do something special and have my rods sitting inside of my frame so that they could be protected. And now with the ability to turn left and right, it's time to turn this Flintstone kart into a Dino Juice powered beast. To do this, we need to make some engine brackets, so here I am again cutting out some flat steel. With this flat steel cut, we're now going to put some bends in it at the proper spacing so that it can mount up to the engine mounts on our engine case. With the brackets made, I can now start tacking the engine into place and determining where exactly it's going to sit. After which, I went ahead and mounted all of our electronics by building certain electronics brackets. We're going to take a look at our beautiful kart yet again with the wheels all on it, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to make a shifter linkage between our frame and our subframe to our motor. To do this, I decided to make a hard linkage changeover system by allowing the shifting pin to be underneath our pivot point and allowing the tab of the shifting pin to be directly center of the pivot point of the frame. That way it allows for suspension travel without having linkage extension and shortening, which would cause the motor to shift up and down. With our linkage in place, it's time for us to move on to our next little portion of our go-kart build, which is something pretty unique. Now, another interesting part about this go-kart is it'll actually be the first go-kart I've built that actually has brakes before I even drive it, which, you know, that sounds kind of ludicrous, I understand, but when I first started building go-karts, I had this crazy idea that if you can't drive a go-kart without brakes and not kill yourself, then you probably shouldn't be driving a go-kart in the first place. Which I realize is probably not the best idea. However, it did teach me how to drive a go-kart without necessarily relying on the brakes. So, practice makes perfect, kids. After all that was done, I had to go ahead and finish trimming out the rest of the motor by attaching an intake, an exhaust, and a battery box for our battery. Now with the engine and everything completely and fully attached, I'm going to focus my efforts on finishing up the exterior by making some front fenders as well as some rear fenders for this beautiful go-kart of mine. Mainly because I've never really put front fenders on any of my go-karts, so I wanted to see how this worked and see if it actually helped as far as like keeping dirt down. But it's not like it's the biggest deal considering I typically wear a helmet or goggles, so it's not like dirt's getting into my eyes. But the fenders on the back definitely help a lot by keeping mud and other splatter from slinging up on you as you're driving. So we're basically in the home stretch of the cosmetic section, and now we're actually taking everything else apart because the go-kart itself is finished. If I wanted to crank it up and go drive it around, I definitely could, but like all good projects, it needs paint before anything else happens. So the deconstruction process has to occur before you can paint everything else, which I really kind of hate this process because it's like, damn it, I just put everything together and now I have to take everything back apart. But in the long run, it's definitely worth it because with a fresh coat of paint, everything's nicer. Oh, and by the way, you're about to see, I goofed. I accidentally trapped my motor by putting all 4 motor mounts. That was not going to work. Here we go though. Hanging a hook so I can hang the frame. And we're going to paint the frame black with Rust-Oleum paint. In fact, all of the paint that we're using for this go-kart was bought from Tractor Supply. And I want to say it was around $7 to $8 a pint. And we're using Rust-Oleum because, well, Rust-Oleum has a good base, kind of like a good primer to it. And it allows it to inhibit rust growth, which it's a go-kart. We're going to need that. So, let's get into painting this thing. Oh man, if I could actually paint like this in real life, I'd be making some serious, real big bucks if I could go this fast. And yes, I know, there's a lot of overspray. I get it. It's gonna happen, especially when you're shooting through expanded metal. It really makes me feel wasteful as hell, because it's like, it needs to be painted, but it's just so little to paint. Now this right here is actually my favorite part, was actually painting these fenders red, because, I don't know, I just had so much fun. And I do want to put a disclaimer out there. It's like, guys, I had like paint and auto body shop in high school a long time ago. Like, let's see, when was that? 2010, I want to say. And, you know, I only have one class, so I'm going to be real. If I'm putting this on incorrectly, y'all tell me in the comments, because I know you would. But it's a go-kart. I don't really care about it all that much. I just wanted it to be a different color, be somewhat shiny, and to look good for the parade that I was making this for. And honestly, I think it came out pretty well, because like for everything that I've watched, everyone just basically says make sure you have a nice even coat and that you don't have any runs. Well, that's exactly what I got, a nice even coat without any runs. Could I have done it better? Probably. Does anybody want to come paint these things for me? Drop a link in the comments and we'll get together, or hit me up on my community page.
The vinyls have been applied. I think it's so much sexier now. We all know why. We're just not gonna admit it.
We can admit it if we want to, but you know what? Let's test this thing out, because I've been dying to drive it. Hey guys, future SpazzyD back again, and well, I just wanted to say that didn't last very long. R.I.P.
I lost the fender.
Yes, we did lose a fender, but you know what? That's okay. Let's keep this thing rolling and put it on the track and see what times we get. Tell you all from that first lap, I either need to leave it in second gear while I'm going around my own go-kart track, or I need to change the gearing up ever so slightly so that I can use third gear. But that really doesn't matter. I built this thing to be showy and to be in parades and to look nice and to be pretty fast with a large top end. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. You have been watching How to Build a Go-Kart Full Dive with SpazzyD. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, evening, whatever you're having. Make it wonderful. Peace.